Have you ever noticed that some people seem completely comfortable being alone? They don't need a crowded room, a packed schedule, or constant messages to feel happy. They can sit quietly for hours, take themselves out to eat, walk through a park alone, or spend an entire weekend at home without feeling like they're missing something. And here's what makes it interesting. People who prefer solitude aren't necessarily lonely, antisocial, shy, or unhappy. In fact, psychology suggests that a strong preference for being alone can reveal something much deeper about a person's personality, emotional world, and the way they process life. While society often treats being alone as something negative, the reality is far more complicated. Some people genuinely feel more energized, peaceful, and mentally clear when they have time away from others. So, what is really going on inside the mind of someone who prefers to be alone? Let's start with one of the biggest misunderstandings. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Loneliness is the painful feeling that you want meaningful connection but don't have it. Solitude is different. Solitude is choosing to step away from the noise because you actually enjoy your own company. Someone can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still feel completely lonely. Meanwhile, another person can spend an entire Saturday alone and feel refreshed, peaceful, and perfectly satisfied. For people who prefer solitude, being alone can feel less like isolation and more like freedom. Think about how exhausting modern life can be. Notifications constantly appear on our phones. Messages demand responses. Social media encourages comparison. Work creates pressure. Conversations require attention. And everywhere you go, there seems to be another demand competing for your mental energy. For someone who values solitude, stepping away from all of that can feel like finally turning down the volume. Silence gives the brain room to breathe. And this leads to another important psychological trait. People who enjoy being alone often have a strong inner world. They may spend a lot of time thinking, imagining, analyzing, remembering, planning, or reflecting. They don't necessarily need external stimulation because their minds can provide plenty of it. A simple walk can become an opportunity to think about life. A long drive can become a private therapy session. Sitting alone with a cup of coffee can turn into an hour of reflection. These people may ask themselves questions that others rarely stop to consider. Am I actually happy with my life? Why did that conversation bother me? What do I really want? Am I living according to my values or simply following expectations? That kind of self-reflection can lead to greater self-awareness. But there's another fascinating reason some people prefer being alone. They may be highly selective about relationships. They don't necessarily dislike people. They may simply dislike shallow connections. For them, having 5 meaningful conversations can feel better than having 50 superficial ones. They may prefer one close friend over a huge social circle. They may value honesty over popularity, depth over small talk, and trust over constant interaction. This is why someone who prefers solitude might appear quiet in a crowded room, but become incredibly expressive when talking to someone they genuinely trust. They aren't necessarily lacking social skills. They may simply be selective about where they invest their emotional energy. And that's an important distinction. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your attention. People who understand this may become increasingly comfortable setting boundaries. They don't feel obligated to attend every event. They don't answer every message immediately. They don't always explain why they need time alone. And they may become comfortable saying, "No, I can't make it," without feeling guilty. To someone who constantly seeks approval, this behavior can look strange. But psychologically, it can represent something powerful: independence. People who enjoy solitude often learn how to entertain themselves, solve problems independently, make decisions without constant reassurance, and spend time without needing someone else to validate their choices. They may still appreciate compliments and encouragement, of course, but their entire sense of worth isn't dependent on other people's reactions. and that can be incredibly freeing. Another interesting characteristic is that people who prefer solitude may be more sensitive to their environment. Crowded places, loud conversations, constant interruptions, or emotionally intense situations can sometimes become overwhelming. After spending hours around people, they may need quiet time to mentally recharge. This doesn't automatically mean they are socially anxious or emotionally fragile. It may simply mean that social interaction requires energy, and solitude is how they recover it. Imagine your mental energy like a battery. Some people recharge by being around others, others recharge by stepping away from them. Neither approach is automatically better. They're simply different ways of regulating energy. There's also something else that often happens when people spend significant time alone. They become more aware of their own thoughts. And that can be both a gift and a challenge. Solitude can help you understand yourself, but too much unstructured isolation can also create a space where negative thoughts become louder. This is why healthy solitude is different from withdrawing from the world because of fear, sadness, or hopelessness. Healthy solitude feels peaceful. Unhealthy isolation feels heavy. Healthy solitude gives you energy. Unhealthy isolation drains it. Healthy solitude helps you reconnect with yourself. Unhealthy isolation can make you disconnect from everyone else. The difference isn't simply how much time someone spends alone. It's how that time affects them. A person can love solitude and still have strong friendships, a healthy social life, and meaningful relationships. In fact, some people become better friends precisely because they are comfortable being alone. They don't cling to people out of fear. They don't expect one person to fulfill every emotional need. They can give others space because they understand the value of having space themselves. And here's another surprising thing. People who prefer solitude often notice details other people overlook. When you're not constantly talking, you have more opportunities to observe. You notice people's expressions. You notice changes in someone's tone. You notice the atmosphere of a room. You notice patterns in behavior. You may even remember tiny details from conversations that other people completely forgot. This can make highly observant people seem quiet when, in reality, they're paying extremely close attention. They're not absent from the moment. They're absorbing it. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the person thinking the most. There's also a connection between solitude and creativity. Many creative activities require uninterrupted attention. Writing, painting, composing music, designing, reading, photography, programming, or simply developing new ideas often become easier when distractions disappear. When you're alone, you don't have to constantly adjust yourself to someone else's expectations. You can experiment. You can fail privately. You can follow an unusual thought without worrying about whether someone else thinks it's strange. That's one reason solitude can become a powerful environment for creativity. But perhaps the deepest psychological characteristic of people who enjoy being alone is that they often become comfortable with themselves. And that is harder than it sounds. Most people spend a surprising amount of time trying to escape their own thoughts. They turn on the television. They scroll through social media. They send messages. They constantly look for something to occupy their attention. But when you become comfortable with solitude, you eventually learn that silence isn't something you have to fear. You can sit with your thoughts. You can notice your emotions. You can reflect on your mistakes without allowing them to define you. You can enjoy your own presence. And once someone reaches that point, being alone stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like a choice. Of course, none of this means that everyone who likes being alone is automatically intelligent, emotionally mature, introverted, or psychologically healthy. People are complicated. Someone may seek solitude because they genuinely enjoy it. Another person may avoid people because they've been hurt. Someone else may be recovering from burnout. Another may simply be introverted. And another person may be struggling with anxiety or depression. The behavior can look similar from the outside. while the internal reasons are completely different. That's why psychology isn't about putting people into simple boxes. It's about understanding what might be happening underneath the behavior. So, if you are someone who enjoys spending time alone, don't automatically assume something is wrong with you. Maybe you simply need more quiet than other people. Maybe your mind thrives when the noise disappears. Maybe you value meaningful relationships instead of numerous relationships. Maybe you've discovered that your own company isn't something you need to escape. It's something you actually enjoy. But remember this: solitude should be a place you visit, not a prison you build. Stay connected to the people who genuinely care about you. Make room for relationships that bring meaning into your life. And give yourself permission to step away when you need to recharge, because there's nothing wrong with being alone. Sometimes, being alone is where you hear your own thoughts clearly for the first time. Sometimes, solitude is where you discover what you actually want. Sometimes, the quietest moments become the moments that change you. And sometimes, learning to enjoy your own company is one of the most powerful forms of independence you can develop. So here's the question. When you choose to be alone, does it feel more like peace, freedom, or a chance to recharge? Share your answer in the comments, because your experience might help someone else understand their own personality a little better. And if you enjoyed this video and want more fascinating psychology, human behavior, and self-discovery content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.